Today we're going to be making Martini and talking a little bit about the history. The Martini is one of those classic cocktails, and if you were to ask people to name a cocktail, chances are it would be one of the first that they come up with. More classy people, well not classy, more people more in the mixology scene may say an old-fashioned or a gimlet or one of their favorite cocktails, and more people, if you were to go to Chili's, would probably say margarita. But if you don't know any other cocktail name, you know Martini. I knew Martini since so long I can't remember, thanks in no small part to James Bond, and I didn't really watch a lot of those movies. I think I've only seen like a few of them. The Martini has a long and cloudy history, but before I talk too much about where it came from or where we think it came from, I want to just go ahead and make one real quick, because I have had a long day and I want to get a drink in my hand. To make a Martini, you need two things. You need gin. Okay, I know that there are vodka martinis out there, but real martinis are made with gin. I'm going with a London Dry here. But you could use any kind of gin you want. I wouldn't go with a barrel gin. You could if you want to experiment, but just a regular good old gin, London Dry, and you're going to need dry vermouth. You do need dry vermouth, because if you were to use sweet vermouth, that wouldn't be Martini. That would be Martinez, which might be more your speed, but we're not talking about that today. It is optional, and I've heard it done in a bunch of recipes, and I've done it a few times myself, to use some bitters, orange bitters. You could use any brand you want. I'm going with Angostura. Or if you don't have any, and you don't feel like getting any, you don't need to. You do need the gin and the vermouth. Now, people will tell you, what their preferred measurements is, or what the classic one is, or what this or that. I usually do a 1 to 2 ratio. 1 ounce of dry vermouth to 2 ounces of London Dry gin. But I heard a ratio yesterday when I was doing a little bit of research that I'm curious to try. And it's quite a bit stronger in favor of the gin. It is half an ounce of dry vermouth. Forgive me if I stop talking while measuring. I just want to make sure. And I'm just using a Dolin dry vermouth. This is a great stuff. You could find it pretty much any liquor store. Martini Rossi will also do, which is much cheaper stuff. So half an ounce of dry vermouth and 2.5 ounces of London Dry gin. It still comes up to the usual 3 ounces that I measure my martinis at, but this one will be quite a bit stronger. And Martini's already a pretty strong drink. As far as the bitters, I'm going to go with, say, 3 dashes. And to dash, just kind of take it and, well, dash it in there. Dash is kind of a non-specific measurement. It's smaller than a bar spoon, and definitely way too small to usually measure. So, yeah. And of course, we are going to need some ice. Just a couple of cubes. We're going to want to crack that. So I just get my spoon. If you don't have a bar spoon, you could go ahead and just use tablespoon, mortar and pestle, jackhammer. Don't really care. If you don't have big ice cubes, then you probably don't need to crack it then. But you do want probably more ice than you think, because martini should be served very, very cold. But you do not want to shake it, despite what Mr. Bond thinks, and we'll get into that in a minute. I'm just going to mix this in the bottom of my shaker tin till I could start to feel the outside of it get really cold. If I had a glass pitcher, it would feel cold a lot slower because of more insulation. So I'm going to wait until it feels almost uncomfortably cold. But the results may vary, and of course I urge you to experiment. I need a strainer. Always chill your glasses when making a cocktail. I keep a bunch of glasses stored in the freezer, which is going to make this kind of frosty and hard for you guys to see. If you don't have any stored in the freezer, just break some ice and put it in the glass to the side while you're making the drink. Just make sure you dump out the ice and any water that may have melted. Strainer, you don't really have to worry about double straining this, unless of course you crack your ice up too much. in the glass. Garnish. It does need a garnish. There are two common garnishes when it comes to martinis. I'll be right back. To my mind, the olive has always been the one that I've thought of when I thought about garnishing a martini, but it actually could be an olive or a lemon twist. And you can kind of go either way with this. I like the olive. I like that it's salty, brings a bit of a salty bite. I like the taste of olives. I think it looks more iconic in the drink. That being said, if you are feeling particularly adventurous, you know, you have good old green stuff, you know, your Queen style olives, or you could go with blue cheese. Better than you think. Of course, this is coming from someone that likes blue cheese. I do think that the lemon might be the better garnish because gin has citrusy notes, and they play really well for vermouth, especially since I'm using orange bitters. I think that the lemon twist is going to help bring out those dimensions a bit better. Your preference is yours, of course. I'm going with the lemon, and if you never had a martini, I suggest you do too. Not everyone likes olives, especially since sometimes they can leave a bit of oiliness on top. Need a peeler. I like to peel directly over the glass, which you guys can't see, but it's going to express quite a bit of oil while you're peeling it. I want all that in the drink. I apologize, I am not going to be editing this video in any way because I really want to get back into making stuff. So I'm just going to start videoing and releasing, and perhaps I'll go back and edit these. That is your martini. Just, you know, two simple ingredients plus a garnish. Bitters are optional. Let's go ahead and see how it tastes. I haven't had this. Remember, I usually do a 1-to-2 ratio of dry vermouth to London dry gin. And here I'm doing 1/2 ounce to 2.5 ounces. So this is going to be a bit stronger than I'm used to. Oh, that is good. Crisp, cool. Like the gin is much more forward here, but it doesn't just taste like straight up gin. That 1/2 ounce of vermouth is playing in the back more. I don't detect the orange bitter so much, but I know they're there kind of rounding out the drink. And of course, I'm getting some lemon on the nose. This is a great ratio, but and it may be my new favorite. I don't know. I think I still like the 2-to-1 ratio, but play around, of course. You may like, 2-to-1. You may like even stronger than this. You might like, 3 ounces of gin to 1/2 ounce of vermouth. So mess around with it a little bit. I encourage you to do that because you never know what your favorite thing is going to be. And if I were to test my favorite ratio, I could be here all day until I pass out from, alcohol poisoning. Now, that's how you make martini, and that's what goes in it. But where does it come from? The truth is we don't actually know 100% where it came from. The first recipes published were in 1888. There were 2 of them, both came out the same year, which means that the drink may have been done before. But here's the thing, those recipes say for martini, but they're very different. They featured aged gin, sweet vermouth, and orange curacao, I've seen even, instead of orange bitters. Later variations, it said that John D. Rockefeller walked into I believe it was the Knickerbocker Hotel, and ordered something new from the bartender, and the bartender mixed in 50-50 of both of the primary ingredients. But, what happened in all those intervening years? Because this is like about almost 30 years of separation, I believe, because I think that was closer to the 20s, and then of course Prohibition came around and the martini changed some more, and all we could say for sure is the martini was invented sometime in the late 1800s, somewhere in the United States of America, and at some point around the mid-point of the century, this century, the 20th century, previous century, we kind of figured out the ratios. Now, you may hear the word dry martini and think that refers to the fact that it has dry vermouth. I haven't done enough research to say definitively, but I've heard it suggested, or perhaps even concluded, that the dry refers to London Dry Gin. This was kind of a new phenomenon around the time that martinis were first kind of being popularized. The gin that came out before this, it was called something else. I think it was called Juniper, or something along those lines. I am sorry for not remembering all these names. But it was sweeter, lower ABV content. London Dry Gin hits the market and is distinctly stronger, more junipery, less sweet. So if you want that to be in your martini, you have to ask, now I want the dry martini with the London Dry. I can definitely accept that. Of course, nowadays, if you were to ask for a drier martini, that would mean less vermouth. It doesn't have to be dry. There are other variations. As I mentioned, there's the Martinez, which I've seen commonly done with sweet vermouth, aged gin, as well as orange bitters. And there's a different recipe called a perfect martini. A perfect martini refers to equal portions of sweet and dry vermouth. No real input on how much gin should be in there. I've had it, it's alright. I'm gonna have to try it again, perhaps even on video, do like a whole range of all the different variations. So yeah, that's the perfect, the Martinez. Oh, and depending on the garnish, can also change the drink's name. If you use a black olive instead of a green olive, it's known as a Buckeye. If you were to use a cocktail onion, it would be called a Gibson. If you were to add some of the juice or olive brine from the olive jar, it would be known as a dirty martini, which would definitely be served with olives. And if you add a little bit of scotch, it would be a smoky martini. Again, this is all just stuff for you to play around with. And you gotta play around. I'm not going to edit this video, and so I don't want it to get too long. I hope that you guys learned something, and this is kind of gearing me up to be a bit more active on my channel. But to finish up this video where we did make a martini, talk about the history from what I understand it, and talk a bit about different variations you might want to look into trying, I want to close on a quote from Ernest Hemingway. I believe it came from his book Farewell to Arms, where he said, "When it came to drinking martinis, I have never tasted anything so cool and crisp. It made me feel civilized." God, I'm a fucking nerd.